Hello everyone, this is Heroes Trivia, and welcome back to another dive diary for our multiplayer balance mod, as today we'll be looking at the changes for the Yellow Turban Generals. And since we have three different classes of Yellow Turban Generals in the Scholar, Veteran, Healer, and the fact that we have two separate DLCs introducing Yellow Turban characters to the game with different design philosophies between the two, we're not going to have this cohesive design philosophy like we had for the other classes. Instead, we'll just be taking a look at individual generals and reflecting their changes here. So starting things off with He Man, we have a very simple price change from 1650 to 1800, as his hail of arrows and surprise attack abilities, as well as his naturally high evasion stat, more than make up for his low damage from his weapon. In addition, with the goal of aligning the Scholar class here closer to a Sentinel and the Commander class, which is the color combination of their warb, purple and yellow, we're going to be shifting his base attack speed from 0% to 40%, which also plays into his character build as this low damage, high evasion, fast attacking general that will win his duels that way. Then following He Man, we have Huang Shao, who we will see a price drop from 1650 to 1500 because he's a weaker character compared to He Man. His morale will be boosted to 55 to have consistency between the scholars, as well as his base attack speed going up to 40%, which is actually quite powerful for his dual weapon, as they typically have fast attack animations already, especially when you dismount. In terms of his two abilities, I want to play up the fact that he synchronizes well with range units. So we have Favorable Skies, which typically boost range block chance and reduces fatigue, as sort of this exchange fire ability, where your units are protected and you can shoot back at them. Here we're going to increase that with additional 100% range firing rate. And for One with Heaven, which is his passive ability that has 75 meter range, originally, it boosts 25% range damage base. We're going to up that to 50% additional damage for both base and armor piercing for range damage. Now, there is counterplay to this, of course, because it has to have your general within 75 meters of the units that are using this ability. In addition, you cannot be engaged in melee. So the enemy could target your other two generals with their three generals during this period and just keep their army back to reduce the effect of your range units. In addition, they also has the option of just charging a general Huang Shao to strip him of this bonus. Now with these buffs, these two abilities become quite strong, which is the goal because range units really don't have a role in the current tournament multiplayer scene. And hopefully with these buffs and others to other range-focused generals, we might see some more range-oriented armies, which typically struggles due to human microing, as well as the fact that speed, such as cavalry units, can decimate armies like these. Then moving on to the veteran class, we have Gong, who's going to see his price drop from 2600 to 1800. And we're going to align veterans closer to champions for the most part, depending on their weapon. In this case, he has the one-handed mace, which fits very nicely with champions. So we're going to lower his morale down to 45, as champions typically have high health, but low morale. His base charge is going to shift from 195 to 161 to also better match that of the champion. And in terms of special abilities, Gong has three unique ones, starting with Desperate Cry, which needs one small adjustment of increasing duration to 30 seconds from 15 seconds. It's a very good ability by itself, but for a 120 second cooldown ability that buffs nearby units that has the requirement of a stronger enemy, I think giving it 30 seconds is definitely warranted. For his other two abilities, Killing Ground does not need any change. It's a very typical high splash damage target enemy general type ability. And lastly, One with the Land, it's a small passive buff for himself to ignore ground type and extra speed. It's not bad, it's not good. We're just going to leave it as it is. He's already very strong. We lower his price quite a bit as well, so I don't think we need to change anything here. Then moving on to Pei Yuanshao, we're going to lower his cost from 1980 to 1800. He's also going to have his normal attack speed back, because for a lot of the Yellow Turban characters, they have this minus 50% attack speed for no particular reason. He's going to be treated as a champion. We're going to shift his morale to 45 from 42, as well as his charge from 63 to 161. Nothing else really needs a change here. He has some very interesting mix of Han general abilities that's actually quite strong for him. And then moving on to our first Mandate of Heaven DLC character, Zhang Bao, who is a veteran, but we're going to treat him like a sentinel because he has 40k health, he uses a sword, everything fit, which is why his cost is going to be 2100 from 1575, 1500 base cost for being an average sentinel-like general, and 600 for being unbreakable. His charge is also going to shift to 80 from 89 to be in line with the sentinel values. He has the 40% attack bonus already, so he's pretty much designed like a sentinel as is. And then in terms of abilities, he has two unique ones in Lord of the Land, which is a pretty standard melee attack. It's very good, don't need to change it. And then Way of Thunder, which is a range and melee attack speed bonus for nearby unit. Very short cooldown. We could increase the cooldown of this, but I think he's already pretty weak and very rarely used, so we're going to leave it as it is. And then moving back to a Yellow Turban DLC characters, we have Zhang Kai, who is going to be treated as a champion because he's using the Golden Ji. He's actually the only one who used the Golden Ji, but you can see a lot of the inconsistency here. He has low morale like a champion, but not perfect, so we're going to move it to 45. His health is 40k, we're going to shift that to 54k to reflect the fact that he should be a champion-like character instead of a sentinel-like one. Base charge goes from 63 to 161, and his attack rate is going to go back to the standard 0% instead of getting halved. Aside from that, he also has a pretty interesting group of Han general abilities, not very strong, which is why his base cost is going to be unchanged here. And then moving back to a Mandate of Heaven DLC character, we have Zhang Liang, who's using the Golden Spear. So in this case, we're going to model him as a champion because of his weapon choice, which we'll see his price shift to 1500, health shift to 54k, his morale is perfect, his charge needs to go up from 26, which is really low, to 161. And in terms of his abilities, Way of War is this passive buff that builds up for nearby units as long as he's in a fight. And we're going to shift that to 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, just to be consistent with every other sort of these phase 1 through 5 abilities that we have in our balance mod. And then we have Lord of the People, which will only activate when he drops below 20% health. It will give nearby units and generals 50 points of morale and 10% armor for 1 minute. It's not bad, but it's definitely not something you want to hang your hat on, which is why he's going to get a very average cost of 1500 here. Then moving on to healers, we're actually going to be treating them pretty much like scholars, even though the color of their orb suggests they're a mix between champion and vanguard, but in reality, they're sort of built as sentinels. So in He Yi's case, we're going to be shifting his cost to 1800 because he's quite strong. His morale is going to go up to 55, charge bonus goes to 80. He's going to get all his attack speed back to 0%. And for his unique abilities, he has 3, starting with Judgment, which is a pretty powerful splash damage attack. We're going to be shifting the duration and cooldowns to match closer with other similar abilities. So for duration, we're going to shift it from 30 seconds to 10 seconds, which weakens its ability as it does carry a minus 50% enemy base melee damage debuff during this period. And for cooldown, we're going to increase it to 60 seconds from 15 seconds, which also weakens its ability, as this is quite strong with the 45-second cycle, where during the 30 seconds, you get to debuff the enemy attack. Then for his other 2 ability, starting with all fronts, we don't really need to change this. It's quite good. We'll continue to use this 120 seconds, 30 second duration, sort of a unit buff. And then for one with the people, it's a passive buff to nearby units. That's where He Yi really shines by boosting nearby units melee evasion by 15% and 15 points of morale. And lastly, we're going to have Zhang Jue, who's going to see his tier 3 cost go from 1650 to 2100. Reflects the fact that he's a pretty average general, but he has Unbreakable. His attack speed is going to go to 0%. We're not going to give any of the healers the 40% extra base attack. They're going to just be standard 0, sort of a hybrid between a sentinel and a champion. We're not really going to give them extra health, but they're not going to get the extra attack bonus. For his unique abilities, Way of the Great Peace, it's a one-use only effect that gives nearby units 2 minutes of extra stats, defensive stats, and they're quite good. We don't need to really change that. His Lord of the Heaven ability, which really his calling card, happens only when he dies, and his nearby units and generals will get invincible and extra morale for the next 1 minute. Now, the only thing we're going to have to mention with Lord of Heaven is that we're going to ban Tier 2 Zhang Jue from being picked in the tournaments, because you could pick up this buff on a Tier 2 general, which saves you cost. we're essentially going to only allow tier 3 generals just to keep things fair, since this is quite exploitable with a cheap general access to very good unique units, which will also get changed, as we're going to mention that part in our last unit-focused Dive Diary 2 weeks from now. So that's going to wrap it up for the Yellow Turbans, as we have covered all the planned changes for them. Hopefully you all like what you see, and remember to like this video to help out the channel, and also subscribe so that we can hit that 30k subscriber milestone faster, which would trigger the start of our next subscriber game tournament. If there are any changes that you disagree with, or additional changes that you want to propose for the Yellow Turban Generals, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I'll see you all next week for the Dive Diary focused on Nanman Generals. So until then, bye!